It is time for the Berkshire Edge on air. Of course, the BerkshireEdge.com is the location that brings us news and events and information 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, the BerkshireEdge.com. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Marcy and David. Hello, guys.
Good morning. Good morning.
Now, there's an intro.
Now,
David?
I don't hear David.
No, David is here. He is here. Say hello, David.
Hello.
There he is.
Here. Yes.
All right.
Okay.
So now
Right.
it's been an interesting week in our area, but I like this about we talked about this here on the air in Great Barrington. The birthday of civil rights leader Martin Luther King was celebrated for Great Barrington a little bit differently.
Well, yes. I mean, we have quite a legacy here in Great Barrington because we are the birthplace, as your listeners know, of W.E.B. Du Bois, and there has been a lot being done in the last few years to kind of recognize the importance of W.B. Du Bois and to embrace the fact that he comes from our town.
Yeah, he was a scholar, went to Harvard.
Paid for by his education, for by local
congregation, actually, here.
Right.
Founder of the NAACP, and he was part of, in a way, a part of the Harlem Renaissance, which actually had a location right across from Marcy's house, as a matter of fact, here in Great Barrington. So we have quite a legacy of these really important African American thinkers and writers.
So there was on Monday there was a ceremony at the First Congregational Church, which also happens to be the congregation that supported Du Bois' education. I mean, it was the First Congregational Church that sent him, that recognized that this was an unusual young man and paid for him to go, I think, first to Fisk. He went to Fisk and then to Harvard. Now, I don't know if they continued to pay for him at Harvard, but they certainly paid for his education at Fisk. And there was quite an interesting panel. There were several academics, there were community activists, they were, talking about Du Bois and the location of Great Barrington on the, there is a Upper Housatonic Valley African American Heritage Trail, and there were a number of places on the Underground Railroad that went through Great Barrington. So it's, we have. And the other thing that's very interesting is that the community is involved in the Clinton Church restoration. This is a African American church in town which could no longer support its building. So the building has been taken over by a nonprofit group and is being turned into a community facility, largely devoted to the celebration of the African American heritage in Great Barrington. And on Monday, on Martin Luther King Day, they also announced the hiring of an architect for the restoration of the building. So that was a big announcement and a big event.
Let us not forget either that Massachusetts was way ahead of the rest of the nation in recognizing the rights of African Americans because of Mum Bet, who was a slave in a household, Colonel Ashley's farm household in Sheffield. He was a lawyer, and he got her freed officially, and it became part of the Massachusetts state constitution long before it was part of the United States Constitution.
Actually, it wasn't he who was the lawyer. It was Sedgwick.
Sedgwick was the lawyer.
Sedgwick.
That's right.
The very famous Stockbridge family, the Sedgwick,
took on this case of Colonel Ashley's servant, a woman named Mom Bet,
who was waiting on men who were meeting with Colonel Ashley, her owner, and they were talking about all men being created equal.
She said, "How about me?"
Yes, she said, "What about me?" So,
anyways, we have a long history of being freedom fighters, you might say.
We won't even call it history. We'll call it a legacy. That is a legacy moment.
Well,
it is, yeah.
Not only do we have a long history of being freedom fighters in the question of race relations, but in Great Barrington, the first armed resistance to the British took place right here in downtown Great Barrington. So
at Town Hall.
So we are freedom fighters in every direction.
Rabble-rousers. Rabble-rousers.
We are rabble-rousers. That's right. We're hoping to live up to that reputation continuously. That's right.
And now we have, we are on the forefront of several other important things which we want to talk about. One is the sale of recreational marijuana, and the other is the banning of the single-use water bottles, plastic water bottles.
Well,
so we'll take those stories.
The sale of marijuana, I have a friend that goes by that area on Sundays, and he said to me, you would think that the line would be shorter on Sundays, but it's not. It's a continue hour and a half wait with about 50 to 60 people in line.
Well, let me tell you,
in the cold.
Yesterday it was really, really cold. There was a huge line right out to the road.
Mm-hmm. And the day before, too.
Yeah, it was below zero. So, it's pretty amazing.
I would think that some of the people that sell marijuana privately are trying to get the word out that, hey, I'll lower my price and you don't have to wait.
Well, I'm sure that's true. Actually, I read an article the other day that said that California was getting far less revenue from the sale of marijuana than they had anticipated because the black market continues and people continue to buy from the black market, which means that there are no tax revenues for the state. And I was wondering the same thing. Why would they, risk criminalization if they can buy it legally? And the only thing I can think of is that it's more convenient and it's cheaper. So I'm sure that's the case. I'm sure you're right, Marshall.
I wanted to go up there and do a story, but I've spoken to about 5 or 6 people, and one of them was somebody who does deal, and everybody said the same thing from Connecticut that I spoke to from this area, and that is that they're not going to wait in line for an hour outside, and B, that also it's cheaper on the black market. And you don't have to go across state lines and worry about carrying it in your car.
Well,
so it's
and I must say our latest coverage of this issue is by one of our writers, Sheila Clary, who is looking at taking a skeptical look at the enthusiasm for marijuana. And there was a very interesting article, by the way, in the New Yorker, written by I think a Connecticut resident, Malcolm Gladwell, who writes for the New Yorker. I think he may live in Salisbury, but he is also skeptical of this kind of whitewashing of the effects of marijuana. And so our writer Sheila Clary is doing the same sort of skeptical look at the way we approach this. Her latest story is how these pot stores got their names, which is like Theory Wellness. What does that mean?
Well, in theory, you'll get well when you.
Yes, I know, but their names are elusive and deliberately deceptive. Of what they're doing. That's what her point is. Anyways,
I'm sure there'll be a better name for the one in Sheffield. I guarantee you.
I'm sure it'll be much more direct.
Like there'll be a big sign, pot. That's right.
Yeah, right.
All right, let's go on to.
But we should say, as we find it so amusing that we have all this pot being sold here, that we have published a number of articles, sort of trying to raise awareness that there are some downsides, that this is not necessarily a drug without consequences. As overwhelming as the enthusiasm is for it recreationally, but Sheila Clary has written a number of articles for The Edge about the fact that there is some scientific evidence that if you start to smoke pot too young, that it can affect the development of your brain. There have been some articles, not necessarily with us, but articles about the difference between smoking marijuana and edibles, that they react to the body differently, and there have been some crimes committed around the country, brutal crimes, murders, of people under the influence, or supposedly under the influence of marijuana, which they have taken in edible form. So, we do feel that we need to be responsible and, raising awareness of the fact that this is not completely.
Well, it's like alcohol and cigarette smoking. It has ramifications, and if you're an adult and you understand the ramifications, that's one thing.
Right,
but if you're
right.
But if you're young and you don't understand the potential ramifications,
then we need to educate.
That's exactly right.
Right.
That's exactly right.
Right. So, I think teachers and parents do have some responsibility in making sure that their kids are using this responsibly, or they know what the dangers are. Although, what kid recognizes danger? That's.
Yeah. It's bad enough. It's bad enough with vaping.
Yeah.
No, really.
Well, yeah.
That's a problem in schools. Yeah. That is a problem in schools.
It is right.
Well, let's go to Alan Chartock, our good friend in Albany, New York.
Yes. Well, Alan is now writing a regular column for the Berkshire Edge, which is very nice.
The whole thing about Alan, and I'd love to say this, is like anybody who's been successful in life. There comes a time in your life when 50% of the people love you, like Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and 50% of the people don't like you because they don't understand you. And that, I do believe, is what is happening to Alan Chartock. He really was a leader in setting up a certain amount of radio stations before anybody else did it. And he's been successful at it for 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
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 Oh, very successful.
Yeah.
But now he's writing about politics that he observes and knows something about it. This latest one is some skeptical views of the behavior of the New York State legislature, the Assembly and the Senate. So he's a very interesting observer of the and experienced observer of the political scene. So we look forward to hearing what more he has to say.
But you're right. It is an opinion. But he does bring. Certainly in this article, there's some interesting information. So readers, we trust our readers will.
I think
learn
it's like,
what they will.
I think it's the great thing about Alan's commentary, whether it's on the radio or whether it's in print, is that people who like Alan go to it, but people who disagree with him also go to it, because one thing you can say, any argument he puts forward is a well thought out argument and statement,
and it's provocative, right? Which is, what we want on the pages of The Edge. We want people to talk about things. So here we are. At any rate,
So now we're going to. This story really is amazing. The next one, which is what this ban of single-use plastic water bottles has grown into, is what you would call a nightmare. These are single-use plastic water bottles, for gosh sake.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Well,
Think Poland Spring. Right.
Think those small things you hold in the fist of your hand.
Yeah. Well, I think they are. I mean, as with the issue of marijuana, I mean, and the question of the nanny state, this is, this has brought out people on both sides. I mean, we have 36 comments on this article, about that we wrote the other day about whether or not the select board is backing away from the enforcement of the plastic water bottle ban.
Well, maybe we should go back and at the at the instigation of students and a group of women in Great Barrington, the Great Barrington Women's Action Group. The town of Great Barrington twice reaffirmed a ban on the sale of single-use plastic water bottles. And instead, we're going to, they were proposing, the proponents of this, were proposing to put up water stations at strategic locations, 25 of them, throughout the town so that people could fill up reusable water bottles, glass or metal. And in fact, they sell them. Or you can get these water bottles, these permanent water bottles. And a number of stores have jumped on the bandwagon, including Guido's, where you could have set up a water station to fill up and a fuel coffee shop where you can go in and fill up your water bottle. But the idea is to take one small step to reduce the horrific contamination of the planet by plastic waste. And so that's what the town voted to do. And the selectmen they're trying to figure out how to implement this and enforce it. And that's what the issue is right at the moment. They were going to, the ban is in place, but they're not going to actually enforce it until next year.
Although it takes effect in May, the ban. Now, the fact is that the law that was passed in the annual town meeting, it was passed in the annual town meeting. Then there was enough opposition to have a special town meeting to vote whether or not to repeal it, and the effort to repeal was defeated. So it has
soundly
defeated by the people who were there. So there has been tremendous support. The bill did not require the installation of filling stations. All it required was the ban on the sale of individual single-use water bottles, the 12-ounce or whatever they are. This committee that brought forth the original proposal has been working very hard to set up water stations, and they are selling metal water bottles that say GB Water. Is it GB Water?
GB on tap.
GB on tap. And there are, at least a dozen local stores who have already committed to have the filling stations in their stores, so we'll bring people in to...
2 dozen, actually.
2 dozen, to fill up their water bottles, which will also be on sale. But there is, nevertheless, a group of people who continue to oppose this, and it's unclear what their arguments are. I mean, they're kind of sniping at details, but it's unclear. I mean, I think that they believe that the town will lose money and that recycling in itself is adequate to take care of all these single-use water bottles, but the people who support it feel, that the water bottles are, part of a huge global problem, and we have to start somewhere. And that, they are providing a place for people to get water if they want it. So, and to go into stores to get water if they want it. So it's, it seems to have taken on a symbolic life, which has nothing to do with the facts or the practical implications.
Can I also
hashtag this plastic and the oceans? Google that, and then Google towns like Sharon, which put things up to catch to debris from beavers and everything like that in these small streams. They fill up with these small water bottles. These small water bottles appear every place.
Let me just interject for a second.
We only have about a minute. We have to get the next story. Go on.
Oh, well, never mind that.
No, go on.
All right, so
it's all right. We don't have to do
this is opinion, but there's a broader issue, which is that people don't necessarily understand after, I would say, 10, 12 years of coverage, how politics works, and that you basically have to start with a it's a slow and painstaking process. And so what happens is an issue that is the people are emotional about get presented as though there are one side's good and one side's bad. And in fact, it just takes time for the crafting to occur so that you can, in fact, do the right thing. But it's glacial. And for people who want and who are used to, shall we say, instant change, I guess what I'm trying to say is this is all part of the process. There isn't a cool thing that has happened that didn't have to go through.
Right.
This essentially, this is a microcosm.
Well, what Great Barrington is trying to do in its little way is make a global change in people's attitudes. That we're not a throwaway culture.
Right.
And convenient as it may be, the convenience has massive consequences.
All right, in 30 seconds, I need the story on the ICE agents and the Albanian immigrant.
Well, I think we actually talked about this the last time. That there was an Albanian immigrant who worked at the Lennox patisserie who was picked up in front of fuel.
Yeah,
I think we did talk about it once before.
We did.
So actually.
So now there's 15 seconds for the other thing.
There's no other.
You said the Ice Age?
We didn't talk about Carol Owens' story. I mean, people should read it. I mean, Carol Owens is always amusing. Yeah, she's a columnist, and she wrote an amusing commentary about the breathless anticipation of impeachment of President Trump, which she likens to a Beckett play, Waiting for Godot. And Godot.
Waiting for Godot.
She's Godot never shows up.
Vladimir has forgotten.
And the impeachment may not either.
Well, that's because Godot is here now, and we finished waiting. We have to move on.
Right.
Okay.
All right, we'll speak to you guys next week.
All right.
Okay.
Very good.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
That is this week's edition of the Berkshire Edge on Air. Of course, you can find them all the time, theberkshireedge.com, theberkshireedge.com.